Hey guys, welcome to the SmartB Sports Update Podcast. I think this is episode 3.
It is, John.
Oh, kicking butt. Try to keep the language down so I don't have to put the language warning when I post it. It was a really good weekend of sport. It was impossible to watch everything. Even I found out the Android TV app for KO doesn't allow picture-in-picture.
Right.
So it's like frantically swapping between different matches.
Yeah, you'd have to have about 8 different screens on to keep up with everything.
Annoying, and it was like, I was like, I don't need to watch the Swans anymore, they're 30 points up. And then come back later and what the hell happened? We will get to that.
We will.
Typically we'll start with the NRL.
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody in the world tip Eels on Thursday?
No, well, certainly not me, John. I think Penrith have probably just have had a bit of a night off going into the finals. What do you reckon?
I think they were in it until Luai went down.
Yeah.
And that's weird for Penrith. Normally, if somebody goes down, it's all right. They readjust and keep going. I mean, Luai is a big loss, but it was just weird. I wasn't watching. I was watching the score on my phone, and I was getting messages from everybody saying, the Penrith boys, again, jokes. Penrith boys must have $10 on that $8.60 boom bet. Yeah. It was quite the shock. It was one of those things that we actually discussed last week. When a team has nothing to play for, they're in massive danger in the last 2 rounds.
That's right. Yeah. Penrith had won 8 in a row going into that game, so I'm prepared to give them the benefit of the doubt. Teams often, at this time of year with only a couple of weeks to go before the finals, they will, just have a night where they take it a bit easy and have a night off, and Penrith have earned that right. So Jerome Luai, you mentioned the injury to him. He's expected to return. In good news for the Panthers, he's expected to return in time for the preliminary finals with that dislocated shoulder. I think Penrith now are going to have to expect Brisbane to beat Melbourne in the last round, and probably I think they're just going to have to sacrifice the minor premiership. I think it's probably out of reach now, but the good news for them is that means they can take the last round to just, basically play their reserve grade team. And
they've got the Tigers, and we'll get to the Tigers in like 4 games, but they can play a reserve grade team against Tigers and still run away with a cricket score. The poorness of the Tigers is just it leaves them in a good position actually.
That's right, and the Warriors are 2 points off the Panthers, but just way behind on the differential. There's a 153 point difference on the differential, so there's no way Penrith could be unseeded from second spot, so they'll get that home final and that double chance in the first week of the semis.
Yeah, and so they're highly unlikely now to get the minor premiership, which we've discussed. They probably don't care. They've already done 2 in a row. They can still do it.
Yeah, I think a team that's won 2 premierships in a row, they're not looking for minor premierships. They're looking for the real thing in a month's time.
I mean, the Storm have hit form. They could, in theory, beat the Broncos. They have many times before.
Yeah.
And then if they do, and Panthers will probably beat the Tigers no matter who they play, they'll take that minor premiership, but it definitely won't be their focus. It'll be, we'll do whatever we need to do for the last round, and then they're preparing for finals already. Yeah,
and Ryan Papenhuyzen, and good news for the Storm, Ryan Papenhuyzen made a successful return, had a 405-day injury layoff in that 37-16 win over the Titans. That's good news for them. A couple of little injury concerns. Jerome Hughes suffered that minor medial strain, according to coach Craig Bellamy. Harry Grant, he was clutching at his left shoulder in that game as well. But I think they're only injuries where they would only miss 1 game if they were going to miss any. And it would just be a precautionary measure to rest them from that game. So those 2 aren't in any danger of missing any finals footy. They might have that game against the Broncos off, but that'll be it. They'll be good to go.
I can't see the Broncos also concentrating that hard on trying to smash the Storm or anything like that for the next week. They'll also surely go through a finals preparation period now. Look, we could talk about the Storm ahead of schedule because I was watching. That was one of the games I was flicking between. The Titans were in that game right up until the 62nd minute. It was 18-16 in the 62nd minute. And then Ryan Pappenhausen walked onto the field and the game was over. And that makes a massive, like the Titans aren't exactly the best team in the comp or anything like that, but the fact they were pushing the Storm, 18-16, right up to the 62nd minute. Ryan Pappenhausen came on in the 62nd minute, and the game changed and it ended up being like, what was it, 37-16 or something?
Yeah, 37-16, yep.
Like they didn't score another point, and the Storm just, the Titans were 16 points at the 62nd minute, and then with 18 minutes to go, the Storm put almost 20 on them, and the Titans couldn't score again. So Ryan Pappenhausen to that team is he's going to drag them kicking and screaming into the finals, into form. Yeah. And they'll do some damage, I think. And
I think always a good indicator of how teams are travelling going into the finals is, are they putting big scores on other teams? And if they are, then it's, look out. Yeah, and exactly. Melbourne have done that. It looks like we got the sports bet odds there in that right-hand column. Go to smartb.com.au anytime. Melbourne look like they're third favourites. They're at $6.50 on sports bet. I think they're justified in being the third favourites behind the Panthers and the Broncos, absolutely. I'd have them there every day of the week.
They 100% locked in their top 4 spot as well. That was the other thing about the weekend, the whole weekend of football. The Storm, the top 4 is 100% set. Obviously, the bottom 4 of the top 8 is not, but the Storm are now... You see, that Broncos versus Storm game is going to be super weird because they weren't going to want Pappenhausen to play big minutes. But they're going to want to rest guys like Jerome Hughes and Harry Grant, who may be a little bit injured, and probably some other players. Broncos are in the same kind of situation. They had Reynolds and Carrigan out.
Yeah, they did.
And they could probably rest them for the last game as well.
Yeah, they could. So, I mean, you could say it's a perfect opportunity, a perfect audition for the Storm going into the finals. They can sort of experiment, they can test a few things out. As you say, they got that 3-point jump on Newcastle in 5th spot, so they can't be unseated from the top 4. I guess it just depends. Not much difference really between finishing 3rd and 4th, I wouldn't have thought. I mean, if anything, you probably would rather finish 4th. You'd probably... It's not much of a choice, though, choosing between the Broncos and the Panthers. That's the thing. No real difference between finishing 3rd and 4th, really, for the Warriors or the Storm, because either way, they're going to have to travel. They're going to have to go to Brisbane or go to Penrith. That Craig Bellamy wouldn't be too concerned about that either way.
It could be the Storm play the Broncos 2 weeks in a row. Which will be interesting.
That'll be very interesting.
Whatever they do this week versus whatever they do next week will be massively different. So we have jumped ahead a bit. We could talk about the Warriors and Dragons. Did you see the 3-second try that was disallowed?
I did, yeah. Zach Lomax, I was thinking of you, mate. I thought, I was hoping it would be awarded.
It clearly wasn't a try. He knocked the ball on. You're not allowed to knock the ball forward and hit another player.
But it would have been something special. Yeah, it would have been the fastest try ever.
Yeah.
Then we would have had to go back through and look at how quickly the other fastest tries came about.
But unfortunately it wasn't to be. And then I don't think the Warriors had a very dominant performance, and I can't give it to the Dragons, to be honest. I think the Warriors were a little bit lackluster, a little bit off. I think they really took it easy knowing who they were playing. Dragons now can't get the spoon unless the Tigers win by 50 and the Dragons lose by 50.
And it's one of those. It could happen, but it won't happen scenarios.
The Knights could pump the Dragons by 50 next week, but I highly doubt the Sea Eagles are going to pump the Tigers. They could actually pump the Tigers by. The Tigers aren't going to win by 50.
It's just
pump them by 50.
It's just not going to happen.
And that's it. Like we talked about it the other day. Dragons haven't lost any games by 12 points or more, and they continued that form. Well done, Dragons. But overall the game was a pretty poor performance by the Warriors, to be honest.
Yeah, they didn't look like they were at their best. They sort of struggled to get out of second gear for most of the game. it could again be a case like, Penrith, going into the finals, you're just taking it. And that's the thing, you're playing to, your main concern at this time of year is to avoid injury.
Yeah.
So that's in the back of players' minds, that tackle that they might ordinarily bust their gut to make. Well, maybe they don't make it this week because they don't want to get injured. It's just that mentality, that holding back mentality that some of these top sides have at this time of year. That there's really not a lot to gain for these teams in the last rounds of the regular season. They're just waiting for the finals to come around.
Look, to be honest, I think the Warriors have the worst lead up to the finals with things like the Dragons this week, and then next week they've got the Dolphins. So they don't have the most difficult.
They don't have a test. I think it's perfect for Brisbane and Melbourne having that perfect dress rehearsal for the finals, that blockbuster top 4 clash. That's going to hold those two sides in good stead going in.
But yeah, the Warriors will just have to coast through. They'll probably most likely beat the Dolphins this week, move into the finals. They'll be 3rd or 4th. They can drop as far as 4th. We'll see next week, at the end of next week, what happens, whether the Warriors play Broncos or Panthers. I don't know who the Warriors would want to play out of those two, neither.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's sort of like, again, the same scenario that they're travelling, from another country in their case. Like the Storm will be travelling interstate. So, does it really make a difference for the Warriors if they go to Sydney or Brisbane? Does it really make a difference for the Storm if they go to Sydney or Brisbane? Probably not.
No.
So it's
not at all.
It's a non-issue, I think, for those two teams. They're just waiting for that first final.
Now, the Cowboys and Dolphins, the Cowboys are they're in it. They have the hardest game this week, and they're in it. If they win against the Panthers, they're the 8th team, because their points differential is so much better than the Roosters. Mm-hmm. Even if the Roosters win, if they win this week by enough, and this is not likely. Like, they need to win by 50 points, and the Rabbitohs need to win by 2, and then the Cowboys will be in it. So, Cowboys comes down to not only the Panthers and Cowboys, but also the Roosters and Rabbitohs, obviously.
Yeah.
That game was weird. Like, I just watched the highlights and the press conference, right? So, Jermaine Isako, he's ridiculous. He's absolutely ridiculous. He's scored 230 points so far this season in a team that is not going well.
Yeah, that's very impressive.
The most points ever scored by a player in the first season at a new club.
There you go.
And then I watched the press conference because I love Wayne Bennett press conferences. Mm-hmm. This was I guess, sorry Wayne, but he gave a lot of praise to his club. They were down 24-0 at half time. And what they scored 10 points in the second half, I believe. It ended up being 34-10, so it was 10 all in the second half. And Wayne Bennett wanted to praise his team and say, look how their attitude is so good, and they wanted to hang in there, and man. It was more the Cowboys going, well, we won this. They clearly took the foot off the accelerator. They knew they had it in the bag. Unfortunately for the Dolphins, they've just fallen in a real hole towards the back end of the season. They won, as we've said, they won their first 3 games of the season, so we had these high expectations. We thought, well, could they even make the top 4 or make the top 8 in their first season? But that's just fallen by the wayside, unfortunately. No depth. A club that's been built, not in a rebuild, it's being built. They have no depth. They went through still in a massive injury toll. They've got no top tier first grade players to fill in. They don't have the pool of talent that they need to, if you're in an injury hole, to stick around. So it's
that looking at the season as a whole. It's pretty good. They haven't come last. They're a new team, and they've finished above 3 teams there. So, that's impressive. But we had those expectations because of that great start to the season, and so now we're sort of feeling a bit disappointed. 8 wins, 15 losses. If you'd said that after they'd won their first 3, well, you wouldn't have been too happy with it, in all honesty.
So, poor Dolphins. Cowboys will What's the draw actually? Because we'll break down every game when we get team lists and stuff like that.
Yeah, we'll do that in our show on Wednesday. So we'll go through the next round.
So we will know on Friday whether the Cowboys are out of the 8, because if Rabbitohs win, Cowboys are out of the 8. If Roosters win, Cowboys still have a chance, and then we'll know Saturday at 7:30 p.m. whether it's Cowboys as 8th. If Cowboys go 8th, that'd be quite interesting actually. Look, the Eels can't make it no matter what, and their win against Panthers is so demented because they ruined the Panthers' chances of their 3rd minor premiership in a row, even though they can't make it. Storm and Titans, we talked about. The Roosters and the Tigers. There's a lot there.
A lot there. Yes.
So, first of all, just to touch on the Tigers, I think they are an absolutely ridiculous outfit. It's not just the off-field drama; it's the quality of football is absolutely terrible. They scored first, and then at one point they kicked a penalty goal and were up 8-6, so they got ahead twice. Their entire game plan is predicated around 1-out passing and then second-man play. And it's actually like one after the other. They do a 1-out pass and then the next one is a second-man play. Then a 1-out pass and a second-man play. There's literally zero creativity in that team. They won't push for any, I don't know, like what Benji Marshall can do for them. So apparently, actually, this was the second week in charge. The other day we talked about that was his first week fully in charge. Apparently this was his second week fully in charge. But I don't know, I checked the timing of the Tim Sheen sacking and stuff like that, and it's all up in the air. Yeah. There's nothing he can do for them the first round, and based on their signings for next year, the state of the club, how they are, I don't see them doing anything next year except winning a wooden spoon either. It was ridiculous to watch. It was it was kind of what you would expect from the Dolphins, a brand new team.
They can't. Their problem is whenever they have good juniors, they just get signed by other clubs. Any good juniors they have get taken by other clubs, and they can't recruit players in because who wants to go there? The only players they recruit in are players who are either aren't quite there or players who are over the hill. Yeah. They can never recruit the big name players in. And that's their problem. You go, well, where's the light at the end of the tunnel? Well, until they keep hold of their good juniors that they develop and recruit the right players, high quality players to get them out of the cellar that they're in, nothing's going to change. Yeah, nothing.
It was this, you want workhorse players and you want X factors, and they don't have either, to be honest. I don't know if it's their training. They've got some talented players, and they just don't play well. And it was shocking to watch. That was the first game I've been to all year. No, it's not. Sorry, I tell a lie. I went to the Bulldogs games earlier this year. But it was awful to watch, and people weren't interested in the crowd. It was a massive crowd, like for a Roosters game especially. It was like 22,000 or something. But people in the crowd weren't interested. Once the Tigers were playing, I was there with Tigers fans who didn't want to wear his Tigers colours. That's how disinterested he is in the club.
So the Roosters, just looking at them out of that game, John. Jared Warrior-Hargraves just lost his mind there. 2 moments of madness. Sin bin for a careless shot on Api Coruscant with 15 minutes to go. His team were up 26-8.
That was ridiculous. Not a single person in that stadium, fans, players, coaching staff, like the people behind the counter serving beer, thought that was anything but stupid.
And then there was an all-in between the players, and he headbutts Stefano Utakamanu. So the hit on Coruscant got him a grade 2 dangerous contact charge. That carries a 3-game ban with an early plea, 4 if he fights it and loses. We should say that, by the time people are watching this, the outcomes on these charges may have been decided, but we're going as if we don't know the outcome yet. Another charge, a grade 1 striking charge for the headbutt on Utakamanu. He'll also get 3 weeks for that with an early plea, 4 if he fights it and loses. So if he takes 2 early pleas, he gets 6 weeks. If he fights both charges and loses, he gets 8. He may as well fight it. I mean,
I think
I think it's worth risking the extra 2 games to fight the charges. But gee, that Trent Robinson would be tearing his hair out.
So I read, I don't know the truth to it. It was on Instagram. I read that was his first ever sin bin, which is bizarre for JWH. It was even worse about it. Like, it was so stupid. Okay, like so. They want to say brain snap and all that kind of thing, but it was just absolutely. There was no need to hit Appy that late. No need to hit him high. There was nothing doing.
No, the game's in the bag. 18 points up with 15 minutes to go. You're playing the bottom place team. They're not coming back.
And it's not the time. Game.
It's not the time to lose your mind like that.
It really overshadowed the return of Sam Walker, because he was phenomenal.
It did. We haven't even mentioned that.
Yeah, like, he was phenomenal. It was amazing. He scored a absolutely brilliant solo try there. He did get a head knock and have to go off for an HIA, but he came back. Crowd was so happy to see him. All of Roosters faithful cheering and everything like that. Everyone was talking about it in the crowd, and then JWH just comes along and does nonsense.
Yeah, so they've won 4 in a row now, and they're now a chance of reaching the finals. So that they can't afford these sorts of brain snaps. That game against the Rabbitohs is now so crucial. But I thought just on that as well, lastly, John, Benji Marshall, interestingly, who's a former Kiwi teammate of Warrior Hargreaves, said he got what he deserved with the sin binning. So I thought that was a bit of spice there, John. I thought that was interesting.
Very good mates.
Yeah.
Well, he did. It was so.
Yeah, no, Benji's 100% right.
As soon as it hit the Roosters fans I was with turning me, that's getting a sin bin. Of course, Tigers fans thought he should have been sent off. I wasn't harsh enough to deserve a send-off. And the other thing that came out of that game was Joey Manu was phenomenal at fullback for the first period, and then he did his hemi. And he might be out for an extended period as well. Yeah,
so they got to worry about Manu and Warrior Hargreaves.
Suwali filled in well at fullback. It did cause a bit of a reshuffle in the back line. But
that's the thing about Suwali, though, isn't it? He's a good fill-in player, but he's not your marquee.
Yeah, he's not the guy you want to...
No, he's not the guy you want to be the face of the Australian Rugby Union, John, the face of all the... He's a fill-in, and you're right, he's a good fill-in, but the Wallabies need more than that, John, which we'll get to a lot later in the show.
So Teddy is apparently back next week against the Rabbitohs, and that was... all last week, leading up to this, it was a matter of course. Roosters will definitely be the Rabbitohs. Rabbitohs are in all sorts. Rabbitohs are all crazy at the moment. They're imploding, and now Roosters have come back. Yes, they got Sam Walker back. Yes, he had a good game. They've lost Joey Manu. They've lost JWH. JWH is going to get downgraded at most. He's not going to get off. Leading into the most pivotal game of their season, now the Rabbitohs are back in it. The Roosters drag the Rabbitohs back into contention.
You're right, they have. And if they miss out, if the Rabbitohs win that game and they miss out, well, we're going to look at these issues and go, well, you've done it to yourselves, Roosters.
I believe JWH re-signed probably his last contract.
Yeah, so I think he's still got a year to go.
Yeah.
He's added a year on, yeah.
And it's the Roosters, so they'd be giving him offers of post-contract job to keep him around. I don't know, man. I think it's kind of at the point where it might be better to not let him finish that contract, actually, to move him, not move him on, but move him into retirement at the end of this year, because if they miss the finals because of missing him.
I'd say they'd be regretting re-signing him for next year.
That's what I'm... Yeah. The Roosters need... I think with... Sam Walker and Kiri as their halves pairing, which Robbo confirmed. That's their long-term halves pairing. Both of those guys are little. Both of those guys are going to get run at all day long. And the Roosters are missing a dominant, physical, defensive back rower. They had Cordner. He had to retire because of concussion. They haven't had anyone come in who is a big bodyguard. And I think letting JWH retire... moving him into whatever back office job they've already got scheduled for him, and finding themselves a bodyguard for Walker and or Kiri, because at the moment, unfortunately, they do have two sides of the field that have that weak link. Kiri was defending at centre. That might have been because Manu was moved and all that kind of thing. But yeah, they don't have the centres or the back rowers to defend their halves. I think they need to get somebody like that, like a Boyd Cordner.
Yeah, look, I mean, to be honest, I think someone like a Cam Murray at Souths should be a perfect fit.
Yeah.
Not that I want to see that happen or anything, but if you're the Roosters, you'd be looking at someone like a Cam Murray.
Yeah,
Cam Murray to fill that Boyd Cordner role.
Exactly, that's what they're missing, and letting go of JWH frees up some money for. Well, they're not letting go of another club.
I think you're right. I think they just need. I think in an ideal world, they just sit down with him at the end of the year and just try and move him on and find another buyer, and they probably will. Someone will take it. Yeah. I'm looking at my club and the club at Leichhardt and maybe the club out at Cogger as well.
Forwards. Because it's the Roosters, so they could move him into retirement. They convince him. They've got the back office jobs or coaching job or whatever the hell they offer everyone.
Yeah, well, they might. I mean, they might have that conversation with him. They might say, "Look, we need you to retire, free up some money in our cap."
Yeah, I think that
it wouldn't surprise me at all if that's what happens.
Because if he gets suspended for 8 weeks, which is a possibility if he decides to fight both charges.
Yeah, and I think they will fight because they may as well.
Roosters might get bundled out first week of the finals if they make it to the finals, and then he'll be missing for the first 7 weeks of next year. So it's if he maybe they could make that decision.
To be honest, I've actually changed. I actually think they'll look at it and go, look, there's no way he's getting off these charges, and I think they'll take 2 early pleas.
Well, that's still first 5 weeks of the season.
Yeah, because there's no way he's coming back this season. It's not happening.
Trials as their suspensions. I can't remember.
I don't think that's allowed anymore. I think you have to serve the suspension in the
regular
season.
The
proper
NRL games. He's going to be missing
games.
for a big chunk early next year, depending on how the Roosters don't make the 8. That'll be 6 weeks off. So because this week 5 weeks he'll be missing next year, and that's a big a hole.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah.
So that's the Roosters. They're in a. It's gonna. We'll do an update on. I think we're doing it a day early, Wednesday.
We're going to do a Wednesday show looking at
team lists and
the games coming up in the last round of the season.
So then we move on to Brisbane.
Okay, all right, John. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to come off the long run.
I was listening to this game on the radio, and then I went back and watched it. I was telling you off camera because I listened to the first half on the radio, and the commentators were just giving it to both squads. It was like park football. It was an absolutely terrible performance. The Raiders let 2 balls bounce on the kickoff and go out. 2 in a row. It was up and down. Broncos score, Raiders score, Broncos score, Raiders score. All soft defence. And then I didn't listen to the second half. I got home and then I was doing some other stuff. And then I heard Ricky Stuart have his conniption afterwards. And look, Ricky Stuart has a playbook, okay? Since he's been a coach, he's got a playbook that he goes through when he loses. And I was like, this is typical. Then I saw the footage of the cameraman and the chair kick. I was like, I should watch this game and see what happened. So do you want to talk us through it?
Yes, I do. So what I might start with, John, was... Okay, so Ricky was, as we saw, was very upset in the press conference. So, okay, the 2 main points of contention out of the match were the sin bin on Jordan Rapiner for attempting a trip on Selwyn Cobbo, as Cobbo went over for one of his 3 tries. I thought there was no problem with that decision to send him to the sin bin. He clearly attempted the trip, so there's no problem with that. Ricky can't have any complaint with that, in my opinion.
It's against the rules.
Yes, you can't trip someone over. And he might not have been happy with the sin bin, but hey, that's what happens when you trip someone.
I believe the actual rule is if you try to trip someone, you get sin binned.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go, John.
That's the actual rule.
So essentially, Canberra's beef can only be with one decision. Now, I thought the contact... I'll talk you through the incident, John. So... 24-18, Brisbane led with 6.5 minutes to go. Brisbane put in a short dropout.
Yep.
And there's a contest for the ball, and Hudson Young comes into contact with Selwyn Cobbo. So the bunker has intervened and said, I think the referee initially was going to allow play to go on. Yeah. The bunker has intervened and said, well, no, Hudson Young's made contact on Cobbo, it's an escort, and he's intervened and they've given a penalty. Then what's happened after that is the bunkers reviewed their own decision, which worked that one out. The bunker reviewing the bunker. It's all very complicated. Now, I had a close look at the replays, John. The contact from Hudson Young on Cobbo was very minimal.
There was nothing.
There was nothing in it. Look, Hudson Young didn't really have eyes for the ball. He had eyes for Cobbo, but the contact was minimal. So should the bunker have intervened in that instance and come in and given the penalty? Probably not. I think it was over the top.
They shouldn't have.
But where my issue is with Ricky Stuart is that this is one decision in a game of 80 minutes. Brisbane, and let's say, John, that the Raiders get the ball right in that scenario, as Ricky would have hoped for, right? They've still got to go and score. They're down by 6 points with 6.5 minutes to go. They've still got to score a try. They're playing against a team that's down on top of the ladder, that's got the second best defence in the league. Do they go on and score that try? Probably not. Probably not. And further to that, Brisbane go on and score another try later. So even if Canberra scored that try, kicked the goal, well, Brisbane won by 11 points. They didn't win by 6.
This is one of the issues I take with, it's very prominent in rugby league amongst fans, coaches and things like that. I take massive issue with it since 2010 grand final, when Brett Morris was dragged out and the referees didn't see. And then on the next play after a scrum, Gaznia scored his try, right? And so Roosters fans, this was early in the game, 20 minutes into the game, Roosters fans go on to say Brett Morris should have been called out. It was Roosters' ball. They would never have scored without it. Now, my response to that is, what I think would have happened is there would have been a scrum play. At the scrum, Roosters would have dropped the ball. Mark Gaznia would have picked the ball up and scored. And my assertion is just as believable as yours, because both of them are in the multiverse. Yeah, they're nonsense. Yeah. So Ricky Stuart having
these what ifs,
I take issue with the inconsistency in this the ball blocking, right? Because week in, week out, it's become really prominent now with the short dropouts. I saw 3 or 4 of them over the weekend. I didn't really realise all year, but it's become really prominent actually. And there are players in every single one of them with the fake eyes, throwing the ball and escorting other players off the ball.
That's the thing. Hudson Young, I know the contact was very minimal, but he didn't have, if you look at the replay closely, he didn't have eyes for the ball.
Definitely didn't. He needs to learn to be a better actor. That's the outcome of it.
Yeah, he does.
He needs to work on that. But I take a lot of issue with the inconsistency, which is very, very topical in rugby league. There is always an inconsistency. And the reason I actually went back and watched it, because Ricky Stuart was so incensed, is Ricky Stuart has this playbook, especially since he's been at the Raiders, where he has built into the culture of the club and fans that the referees are out to get them. They never get the rub of the green. We never, these press conferences, we never get these. It's always against us. Why is it always against us? After watching that one incident, I thought, man, he might be a bit right. Because I saw it again the next day. I saw this exact same kind of play the next day when no penalty was called. Bunker didn't review. Okay? So this is, I take a little with a little bit of grain of salt, perhaps there is a vendetta against the Raiders. However,
maybe
change the game.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's one decision in 80 minutes of a game. Are we expected to believe that this one decision cost Canberra that result? A game they lost by 11 points?
Yeah.
Seriously, and look, maybe Ricky Stuart's feeling the pressure. Canberra's now lost 4 of their last 6. They have a terrible differential of minus 119 points.
It's the only minus in the top 8.
So there's now a chance they could miss the finals. So we talked about them losing 4 of their last 6. One decision made in the last 6 of those games that we just talked about doesn't change.
No.
That doesn't turn around losing 4 of those last 6.
They've lost their home, in theory they lost their home final. If they lose against the Sharks this week, they don't have a home final, right? And Ricky Stuart, because it's his playbook, I have a feeling that he will go ahead and use that at the end of the the post season. It's going to come down to that Hudson Young penalty, right? Again, I think it was a stupid penalty. Bunker should not have intervened.
Yeah,
that is beyond ridiculous.
We agree on that.
Yeah.
But what we're arguing, John, is that we agree the decision's wrong. But we're arguing with how it's being viewed. It's being viewed as having cost Canberra the game, and it didn't cost them the game.
No, it's exactly. Mark Gasnier would have picked the ball up off the scrum. All that would have happened if he hadn't have, just as believable. All that would have happened if he hadn't have, he would have then raised his elbow in a run, got a penalty against him anyway, and Brisbane would have scored. Like both of these are multiverse kind of nonsense. It's not real. You can't say this.
It's a what if. It's the people who are blowing up about it. Well, they're just assuming that Canberra would have scored off that set of six.
Exactly.
They're also and even if they did score, even if they did convert, it's only 24 all. They did, as I said, they won by 11 points, not by 6. And then it's only 24 all. Then you've still got to go and win the game after that. There's so many, well, then this has to happen, this has to happen, this has to happen.
The game was back and forth. Like, Canberra scored, Brisbane scored, Canberra scored, Brisbane scored. So, given the law of averages, if Canberra had have scored, Brisbane would have scored. So they would have won anyway.
That's right. It's this taking one incident from a game and thinking that it changes the whole result. That's just got to stop. And then we get to Ricky Stuart telling the cameraman to F off. I'm sorry, Ricky, the TV networks pay $2 billion for the TV rights deal. If they're going to have a cameraman in your face, then you're going to have to put up with it. I'm sorry. That's no way to talk to somebody. You can't tell somebody to F off who's just doing their job like that.
That cameraman is... Also, like, people won't really get it when it comes down to the camera. That cameraman wasn't near him. It wasn't like a Britney Spears paparazzi moment. No, running up in Ricky Stuart's face going, those cameras zoom in across fields, man. Like that guy, and all it was Ricky would have seen himself on the big screen and turned and found the camera. Like, the guy could have been 100 metres away. Absolutely.
Why is he telling the cameraman to F off? The cameraman didn't make those decisions he's upset about.
He shouldn't have kicked the chair, and then the cameraman wouldn't have looked at him. He's a public figure in a job in which he is required to be seen by cameras.
As I said, the TV networks pay $2 billion for the TV rights. If they're going to put a TV camera on you towards the end of the game for a few seconds, I'm sorry, Ricky, you've got to put up with it.
Don't be a coach if you don't want it.
The TV stations should be up in arms about this. They should be complaining about why their employee was spoken to like this. This is no way for an NRL coach to behave. I coach kids sport. This stuff filters down. You might think it doesn't filter down. It does. Yeah, kids are going to look at that and go, what, is that okay for an NRL coach to speak to an employee on the sideline who's just doing his job? And they think it's okay for him to speak to him like that?
That's one of the things they have as part of being in kids sport, especially in like rugby league and stuff like that. They have issues with people abusing people, and they have signs up saying the officials are just doing their job. Don't abuse them. You'll get banned. I also coach kids, and I've talked to kids coaches who have rules in place in the sport that I do that if parents, officials, anything like that are abusive, they're banned from attending the events. Ricky Stuart's got form. He's been suspended, which was weird. A coach getting suspended for a week.
Yeah, well, there you go.
I wouldn't mind him getting suspended for that, actually, again. Like, that is beyond ridiculous. One of the things that I like to go the other side as well. I do agree with Ricky Stuart. One of the things I really hate about all this is that the coaches aren't allowed to criticise the refs. I understand.
But I have no problem with constructive criticism of decisions. But going in a press conference and saying that you're pissed off and telling a cameraman to F off, that's no way to speak. You've got to do better than that.
They shouldn't be allowed to be abusive to refs. They shouldn't be allowed to say falsehoods around refs. But they have to skirt this super fine line, which is very difficult for them. And then the press will complain that the coach is not being forthcoming enough, but it's difficult for all coaches. Des Hasler had the same issue. Jeff Tuvey, all Manly coaches. I can't remember which coach it was, but there was actually a game where the referee was a major contributor, and the players told the coach, "Mate, we'll pay you fine." And because there is sometimes where the coaches need to say negative things about the refs, and there has to be a limit on it, of course. They can't go in and go, he's an effing idiot, and he's a cheat, and he's obviously got money on the game, and all that.
I
can say that, but
they just
can't.
I think it's fine to say, look, I didn't agree with this decision that was made.
Yeah,
that's fine.
The other thing that I don't like is they actually have no recourse. The coaches apparently have no recourse. They can contact the head ref, like Jared Maxwell. I think he's the head ref right now.
He is, and interesting you mentioned that, John. There are actually some quotes from Ricky Stuart I'm going to read out on Jared Maxwell. So Ricky Stuart said, "I reckon the power has been taken off Jared in a number of areas because they aren't improving, and Jared was a very intelligent referee." He goes on to say, "He is a very good boss of the referees. I honestly believe there has been a lot of power taken off him." He then says, "It happens every game on these escorts. I don't understand why it has been us. Or I do understand, but that's probably the part I can't talk about." Now, by doing that, he's clearly just trying to deflect.
Absolutely.
That's
his playbook, man.
Yeah, you're right. He's trying to deflect from his own team's poor run of form, losing 4 of the last 6. He's trying to give the reporters a different headline than the Raiders are struggling. It's better for him if the headline is, Ricky tees off on the referee's body than having, the Raiders are struggling as your headline. So, and he also left reporters waiting over an hour for that press conference too. So
he's not Conor McGregor.
It was quite the display that he put on, John. But just that real, as you said before, it's his playbook. It's deflecting. He's not the only coach who deflects. Wayne Bennett does it.
Yeah, Wayne Bennett's better at it though.
He is, yes, he is. And he's more measured the way he goes about it, and I think he thinks it through more than Ricky does. I think Ricky just lets his emotions get the better of him and just lets fly at everybody without properly considering the consequences of his actions.
So they're going to play the Sharks this week. Is it in Shark Park or is it in Canberra? Let's find out. It is in Shark Park at PointsBet Stadium. And it's on Sunday. It's the last game of the regular season. And that is going to determine 6th and 7th spot. That'll be an interesting one.
And I mean, the Raiders could miss out on the 8 if, if the Cowboys...
Because the Raiders are minus 119, right?
Yeah, so that's, the Cowboys win. I mean, we know one of the Roosters or Rabbitohs is going to win because they're playing against each other and they're on the same points. So if the Raiders lose, the Roosters or Rabbitohs will definitely finish above them. And then it's just whether the Cowboys win in that last round. So, the chance the Raiders miss the 8 altogether, John.
And that will be... And so when is... Ricky Stuart's been there for... ever.
10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
He's made the finals a few times. The Raiders just traditionally whimper out.
Well, what I think we might do, John, is let's see how they go next week.
I think next week will be
if they miss out next week, I can bring in some statistics on that for you, and we'll look at Ricky's coaching record at the Raiders and see how he's gone there.
That's a good idea. So watch out for next week. We're gonna kick off on Ricky.
Yeah. So
the Bulldogs and Sea Eagles.
Yeah, John. Look, that was just touch football. The Bulldogs were some of that defence. It was just embarrassing, John.
I got a stat for you. It's awesome. It's not awesome for you.
I bet it's not.
Bulldogs have conceded 435 points in the last 11 games. It just scrapes through at under 40 points per game, like 39 point whatever it is. Now here's the thing about it, right? They scored 24 points. If you're scoring 24 points and not winning, because you
not even getting close to winning,
not even getting close.
Yeah, like 18. They lost by 18 points. The other thing about them, right? Why they're conceding 100 points is they led the comp in missed tackles this year at the start of this round with 899 missed tackles, and then they missed 45. 45 missed tackles. No wonder they had 42 put on by a Sea Eagle squad that aren't flying, that aren't going well. That's I think what I think we can do, John, is once we look at. We can have a good look next week at some of these teams that have missed the 8 and where they've gone wrong.
Because the
you could argue that as we said, they were supposed to come about 9th or 10th this season. So you could argue that they're one of the worst performed teams of the year in terms of, and I know they're third last, that sounds obvious, but in terms of potential result versus actual result, not delivering on your potential. That's the thing. The Tigers are last, but I think a lot of people would have had them there, John. That's not a big surprise to many people. The Bulldogs were supposed to be on the fringe of the 8. It hasn't happened. I haven't got anywhere near it. And again, questions will be asked. And John, next week at the end of the season, I'm going to go through these things in some more detail.
We'll have to look into a lot of stats because even though they aren't last, statistically, there's many of the negative stats that they're last on. So there's nothing. Well, depends on the club, but the people they're playing. But they have shown they can attack. But attack is useless. Actually, there was. Tigers in 2005 managed to use attack to win a competition because the attitude they seemed to have was doesn't matter how many tries we let in as long as we score more.
Yeah, well, it worked for them that year, didn't it?
I think we talked about it last week. It was an experiment. It seemed to be a Tim Sheen's experiment. But yeah, we'll get into the Bulldogs next week and we'll really get into them because there's some silly buggers going on there. And
a lot.
We round out the NRL round with the Knights versus Sharks, which, as we discussed, was a match of the day, but man, it wasn't a match of the day.
Yeah, I mean, Nico Hines being ruled out really affected the Sharks, and Newcastle just. You might have seen, John, the betting market was pretty close before Nico got ruled out, and then once Nico got ruled out, the Knights really came in there, and the Sharks moved out in the betting 32-6.
It was 6 all at half time. Yeah. And that was one of the games that I was swapping between over and over and over again because I wanted to know what was happening. But once the Knights ran away with it, I was I don't need to watch this anymore. So they lost. The Knights lost Jackson Hastings, Lachlan Fitzgibbon, and Kurt Mann pre-game through injuries, and still managed to do this to the Sharks.
It's good signs for Newcastle, isn't it, going into the finals?
Ponga did cop a shoulder injury, which will be going for scans this morning.
Yeah.
They talk about it not being as bad, but he was actually in everything until he got injured. Mm-hmm. I just mentioned that the Bulldogs missed 45 tackles. Sharks missed 71 in this game.
Oh, wow.
What is wrong with the Sharks?
Yeah, well, it's hard to imagine how Newcastle didn't put more points on than the 32 then.
It was, they were, after the first half, it looked like they gave up. I don't understand why they gave up. They were in it, and they just gave up. 71 missed tackles in one game of football is an unacceptable stat. Sharks will play Raiders this week, and we'll see what happens. Sharks can't drop out of the 8. 32. Not unless Raiders put a score on them and Cowboys put a score on the Panthers. Because their differential is up 104, plus 104, while Cowboys are 36. So, what's that?
It's highly unlikely.
It's got to be.
We're getting into that mathematically possible, but not really possible.
But they can come 7th or 8th and lose their home semi, which I think that'd be a failure for the back end of the year as well. It was a good game for the first half. It was a competition for the first half, and then it was a shocking display by the Sharks in the second half, and I've got nothing but criticism for them.
So I know we've now been through all the games, John. I was just wondering if I could touch on the Latrell Mitchell issue again.
Check in again. Gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. So I just got a few more things to say on the matter, John. So Rod Churchill, the son of Clive Churchill, who the very prestigious best player in the grand final medal is named after. Yeah. He called Latrell a cancer. Now, can I just say, I think that's taking the matter a bit too far. Last week on the show, we just went through the facts, John. We went through the fact that, he got in a blow-up with Cam Murray in the video session. He has in part caused Sam Burgess, the assistant coach, to walk out on the club. He wasn't chasing players in defence. We went through all of these things, missing goals from under the post. We were just stating the facts. We gave a very measured assessment last week. Yeah. I think to call somebody a cancer is taking matters too far. But could I also just say that I saw the Herald journalist Andrew Webster yesterday say that when he was asked if Latrell should be asked on television yesterday if Latrell should be held accountable, he said, "It's not my job to hold him accountable. That's the job of the coach." And I thought, what? I'm sorry, Andrew, but you're a journalist. It is your job to hold players accountable. So by that logic that Webster's using, which was very mysterious to me, it didn't make any sense to me, that no journalist should ever hold any player to account because that's the coach's job. I'm sorry, I don't understand that. And just because one person goes too far, it's this one extreme or the other that everybody gets into. Just because one person takes it too far and gives a criticism that's way too over the top, it doesn't make that person immune from any other criticism that's constructive. Absolutely.
Everybody's involved now. Anthony Mundine's made comments because he can't keep himself out of everything in the world. He of course he's on Latrell's side. He says everyone's picking on Latrell and Cody Walker. I understand for
a reporter to say that it's not my job to hold the player accountable. Like, come on, give me a break, John. Like, give me a break. That's precisely your job. I'm sorry. So come on, Andrew. Like, see, he's a very good journalist, but come on, mate. Like, so aim up.
I think there was comments last week. I remember there were comments last week about how Latrell is also coddled by the media, and it kind of comes down to this as well, where he is like a special player, right? And he has had lots of...
He's extremely talented, and that's why it's so frustrating.
He's, it's well known how many controversies he's had and how many issues have happened, not just around his playing, but like in his personal life and things like that. And it just seems like there's a few journalists that, I don't know, like they're in fear of reporting negatively about him.
Yeah, you get to a point where a journalist is saying it's not their job. That's in the job description. It's not my job.
It's not my job to do my job.
What's that?
It's absolutely nonsense. And Latrell, there's a few people now calling for Latrell's sacking. It's becoming more and more prominent.
As I said last week, John, I think, and again, I think they should sit down with him at the end of the year and they should look to part ways, and he'll find another club because he's that talented. They'll find another club to pay the full amount. They'll be able to get him off their books. I think that should happen at the end of the year. I wouldn't be going as far as to call him a cancer. I think that's way too far. That's very personal.
Well, I think
that's unnecessary criticism.
What's his name? Rod Churchill knew that he'd gone over the top when he asked them not to publicise his texts.
Yeah, so he's gone too far there. And so Andrew Webster said that. I agree with that part of what Andrew Webster said. I think he's right. But yeah, I know I keep saying, it's not my job. Seriously, mate.
So now there's like a whole thing as well about because he actually awards the Clark Churchill medal. Yeah, he actually awards the Clark Churchill medal. Imagine the Roosters, the Rabbitohs made the grand final.
Yeah, so I think the Rabbitohs are saying they might boycott, but that's the thing. That's another one of those. The Rabbitohs aren't going to make the grand final. Like it's one of those. It's not going to happen this year scenarios, And if they were to make it next year, well, things might have been worked out by then. Well, I mean, if the Rabbitohs, would have to win the premiership this year for that to become an issue, and it's just not going to happen.
4 weeks is a long time in football. Well, 5 weeks is a long time in football anyway. I'm sure it'll be like they'll meet and they'll have a sit down or whatever, and blah blah blah. It'll all be solved before then anyway. But yeah, I think what it speaks a lot to is the fact that Latrell Mitchell. The Rabbitohs have a Latrell Mitchell issue, and they need to resolve it. They're losing coaches over it. John Morris could have gone as well. They've got club legends, sons of club legends.
And that's the thing. That's the thing.
He played as well, right? He played for the Rabbitohs.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like you may think his criticism was too harsh, but it's happening, isn't it? And you got to look at why is it happening?
Exactly.
He's destabilising the club. He is, even though on this one occasion some criticism has gone too far across the line.
You don't need to insult him.
No, to call him a cancer, that's... Yeah. cancer's a terrible illness that happens to people. The word should not be used to describe a football player.
Like that nonsense is Instagram nonsense, and I never ever support. I hate it.
Yeah,
I hear this crap on Instagram with things like that.
The most annoying thing about the extreme criticism is it a lot of the time it makes legitimate criticism invalid.
Absolutely,
and
it becomes less around the defence of the criticism that is valid and more around the defence of the...
Yeah, and then it gives someone like an Andrew Webster a licence to just completely defend Latrell rather than... And to do something very silly like effectively say it's not a journalist's job to give criticism of players.
To do their job.
And so, so it's given him that licence and that's not on either. Like, Andrew Webster could have just said that Rod Churchill went too far and could have still made all these criticisms that we've made of Latrell, and it would have been fine. Bizarre.
This is the gift that keeps on giving. Latrell Mitchell. There's absolutely no denying the guy is a gun player. That's it. Everyone preempts their criticism with that. There is absolutely no denying. But to me, he's the Nick Kyrgios of... I know you love tennis. I thought he's the Nick Kyrgios of rugby.
That's a very good comparison, John. Very good.
If he tried, he'd be higher than 13th in the world. That's the thing. And sports people are meant to be arrogant in some ways. I'm not saying Latrell Mitchell is arrogant, but they're in a team sport. It's not the kind of thing where you can, cause destabilisation in your team. Because you break your team falls. And the Rabbitohs have fallen. What are they? They're 2-2 in the last 2 matches. They haven't set the world on fire, and they've got a massive game this week. If they don't sit down and work their stuff out, even though we discussed the Roosters, they're going to have some issues with players. If they get smashed, well, it's all going to fall on Latrell. And not all of it should fall on Latrell, but it will all fall on Latrell. Unless someone does something stupid like calls him a cancer, and then it will just be about defending Latrell.
Yeah.
And the other thing...
It's the one extreme or the other. Yeah. It's just so frustrating.
It's going to come down to it, which is what I was alluding to before. I hate this more than anything about the internet, why I believe people should require an internet license before they're allowed.
I'm on a Unity ticket on that one with you, mate.
If they Rabbitohs lose... I guarantee you Latrell Mitchell, Cody Walker are going to get ridiculous coward Instagram death threats and things like that.
Yeah, again, way too far.
And then it's not going to be about the team. Yeah. It's not going to be about the issues with the team. It's going to be about guys, why are you threatening to kill Latrell?
And then the defenders of Latrell are going to use that to make him immune from any other legitimate criticism.
So those idiots that do that, give yourself an uppercut. So that's...
to use the words of Eddie Jones, which we'll come to a bit later.
Definitely. That was why. Glad you got that reference. So that's the NRL for the week.
It's a good wrap we've done of the NRL, I think, John.
Still one round to go. We'll preview the games with team lists done on Wednesday, and we can move now to the AFL, which was also very interesting.
Collingwood and Essendon on... Friday night, John. So Collingwood returned to form with that thumping 70-point win over Essendon on Friday night. It's Collingwood's first... It's locked in Collingwood's first minor premiership since 2011. They've won that, so good on them. They kicked the first 11 goals of that game, John. There were 74,000 in the crowd at the MCG. So they've now finished the season with an 18-5 record. Jordan De Goey and Bobby Hill were both back after missing the previous game against Brisbane through injury. Skipper Darcy Moore, he'll almost certainly return from a hamstring strain for that first final. But Nick Dacos will miss at least that game with a knee injury. So I think they'll be hoping they get the win and then they get Dacos back for the prelim final.
So that'll be the perfect outcome. I've got them just written down today because it was all... so Collingwood will play Melbourne on Thursday at the MCG. And so one of the things about that game, Collingwood playing themselves back into form actually, winning by 70 points. One of the things about the Bombers actually is last week, I believe, the GWS also smashed them by 100. And so, we talk about what's a good warm-up game. Collingwood playing themselves back into form against a Bombers team that are on the slide actually might be the best thing for them. I really think they've now got some confidence. Smashing by 70 is a big margin. no matter who you're playing. And
again, it's the same as what we were talking about with the NRL. You're putting that big score on at this time of year. It's a good sign going into the big game.
I wanted to ask you, actually, does the AFL still have the bye between the...
They do. So there's going to be... I'm glad you mentioned that. There's going to be that week off in between the last round and the first finals. I can just run you through those.
Yes.
So the times and the grounds and the days have all been locked in for week one of the finals. So Thursday, September 7th, so not this Thursday week. Collingwood will play Melbourne at the MCG at 7:20 p.m. Friday, September the 8th. Carlton will play Sydney at the MCG at 7:50 p.m. That's an elimination final.
Yep.
Obviously, Collingwood and Melbourne's a qualifying final that's not elimination. Saturday, September 9, the second elimination final, St Kilda versus GWS at the MCG. That's at 3:20 p.m. That second qualifying final between Brisbane and Port Adelaide at the Gabba is 7:25 p.m. on Saturday, September 9 as well. So there's no games on Sunday, John. That's just so they get enough time for the turnaround for the next week. So they leave that Sunday vacant.
It's Yeah, and Brisbane will get 2 home games at the Gabba through the finals as well.
That's the thing. You finish... yeah, that's right. So that's the beauty of finishing in the top 2. You're guaranteed to get 2 home games. You either get them in the first 2 weeks of the finals or you get them in the first week and the third week, depending on whether you win that first final or not, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, that was the... it's... So 1 week off. Next week we won't have any... Oh, we'll have previews next week.
Yeah, so a preview show, I guess we won't need to talk about the AFL because there'll be no AFL on, but obviously plenty else to talk about on Wednesday with the last round of the NRL and plus a number of other sports that are going on at the moment. Back onto the AFL,
Yeah, so the Hawthorn versus Fremantle was, we discussed it the other day, it wasn't going to be anything.
No.
But it did, both of those teams had their weird... record, and it ended up being that Dockers continued to win, loss, win. Like can't string 2 in a go. The game was meaningless. It was boring. It was pointless. I got nothing.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think we're just sort of focused on the teams that are still involved, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. It's like this. So then there was the North Melbourne versus the Suns. I read this and I had to recheck it. North Melbourne broke a 20-game losing streak by beating the Suns. But it still took to the third quarter to get ahead. It was a pointless, boring game. And there was Brisbane versus St Kilda. Everybody knew Brisbane was going to win that. And so it means Brisbane gets to host 2 finals. I think Brisbane actually might push for the win. They're paying the same as Collingwood. Both are paying $3.75 outright.
Yeah.
I actually think Brisbane will...
It's just the concern over Collingwood. It's just those injury concerns to key players. If you're going to win the premiership, you need everything to be going perfectly on the injury front. And to have those players... I know Darcy Moore's expected to be back for that first final, and Nick Dacos will feature later on in the finals. But you just... when you're going to win the premiership, you don't have these concerns. Like, everybody's fit, everybody's available... You've got no problems, so... Yeah,
and I feel like Brisbane are in that kind of, that box seat. They didn't get first spot, but it's irrelevant in AFL. Anyway, we talked about it before. I think they will dominate... Who are they playing?
So it'd be Brisbane's... playing...
I think they'll dominate Port, get that extra week off, and then I think they're a higher chance than Collingwood to win the premiership.
Yeah, so Brisbane's last premiership was 2003 when they went on that winning run where they won 3 premierships in a row, 01, 02, 03. Collingwood's last premiership, 2010, of course, you remember, John, the drawn grand final and then the replay. Poor St Kilda.
The greatest thing ever.
So...
it never happens and everyone always says, why don't they fix it so it can't happen? Because they get to sell 2 grand finals.
Yeah.
The AFL wanted to happen every year.
I think that was the dream scenario for the AFL. Yeah. Collingwood also made the grand final in 2011, lost to Geelong. They made the grand final in 2018, lost to West Coast. So it's going to be interesting.
If it ends up being Brisbane versus Collingwood again, I think Brisbane will that can happen, yeah, if they win, yeah.
They're the top two. So assuming if they win their first finals, Collingwood and Brisbane, they'll go on to opposite sides of the draw, and then it can happen. If one of them were to lose, though, under this system, if one of them were to lose in the first week of the finals, well, then they'd go onto the same side of the draw.
Yeah.
If one were to lose and one were to win, they'd go onto the same side of the draw. So that's the little quirk in this.
So I think
so 1 and 2 aren't always on opposite sides. If one wins and one loses, they can go onto the same side.
Okay, so I think Brisbane are in they're my tip for the thing. Cause so Collingwood and Brisbane are the only teams I can see winning it. The other 6 are, what do you got? The Swans paying $36. Put a tenner on that. Don't put a tenner on that. There's no chance. We'll get to the Swans. But, and so then there was the Crows versus... This is the problem with the AFL this week, where there was so many games that were just...
a lot of meaningless games because the Bulldogs, and it didn't work out for them, but they were the only team at the start of the round that could have jumped into the 8, and that made a lot of these games like this one redundant.
So the Bulldogs actually got into the 8, and then we had the...
And then GWS knocked them out of it last night with that win. Yep.
And then Port Adelaide locked in 3rd spot in their game.
Yep.
And we can get to the Swans of Melbourne, because that is...
Yeah.
So these last 2 games, Swans versus Melbourne and GWS versus Carlton, were the big ones.
Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on... John, now that you've mentioned the Swans, it was great to see that lap of honour at half-time for Lance Franklin. I was just going to go through a bit of a career snapshot of his, if I could. So a 2-time premiership player with Hawthorn in 2008 and 2013, an 8-time All-Australian, that's phenomenal numbers. 4-time Coleman medalist as well, leading goal kicker in the AFL 4 times. 2 times won the AFL Goal of the Year in 2010 and 2013. So he played 354 games with Hawthorn and then Sydney. He also kicked 1,066 goals, which is the 4th most of all time, behind Tony Lockett, Gordon Coventry and Jason Dunstall, John. So a phenomenal career. Congratulations to him and good on him. I'm glad they had a big crowd there yesterday to bid him farewell.
And he got that. It would have been nice if he hadn't have come back and got injured and been able to play out the year. I don't think it would have changed very much with the Swans, but it was good that they were able to get a home crowd to send him off in style, and it was amazing. It was basically Buddy's day. That wasn't the Swans' day. So I turned this game off, because there was so much on, and I was watching it, and they were up by 30 points, and I was like, I don't need to watch it anymore. It's fine. The Swans are, I think at that stage, they're the live ladder, they were 6th. I was like, yeah, sweet, it's done. Then I checked when there was 5 minutes to go, and they were down by 20 or something like that. I was just shocked, so I had to turn back over and start watching it again. So they ended up losing by 21 points. Their 3rd and 4th quarters were just... I don't think the Swans can push because they can't play a whole game. They're making up the numbers.
Yeah, well, they've finished 8th. They play Carlton in the first week. I mean, they'll be heartened by the fact that GWS, really put Carlton to the sword last night in that game that we'll get to in a moment, John. So that will give the Swans some hope, I think, that their crosstown rivals, went down there and beat up on Carlton.
The Swans did beat GWS a few weeks back as well.
Yeah. So I think...
Law of averages.
Yeah, I think that they will take heart from that, but very difficult to see a team coming 8th, John, going all the way, winning 4 finals.
They definitely
and winning the premiership.
I think they'll get knocked out this week if they put in another performance like that. The 3rd and 4th period were just... Yeah, I know the Swans have history in this kind of regard where they're, but there was a period where they were 3rd quarter specialists and they taper off in the 4th and stuff like that. But to be winning by 30 and then lose by 21 is not a finals football team.
Could I just touch on, John, that there's a bit of a danger with the way the AFL structured their final system, and the Western Bulldogs exposed it in 2016 when they won the premiership from outside the top 4. The problem with having the week off going into the first final is the teams in the top 4, let's say they win their first final, right? Well, then they have a week off after the regular season, they win their first final, then they have another week off before the prelim final. So they play one game in sort of, and they miss these 2 weeks either side. That can really leave those top 4 sides really underdone going into the prelim and the grand final. It can leave them exposed. So It's something like that I think. I'm not saying the Swans are going to do it. I don't think they're playing well enough.
I think Carlton are more likely to do it than the Swans.
That's the thing. There's other teams in that bottom half of the 8 who you think are more likely. But the way they structure their final system, it gives a chance to those teams in the bottom half of the top 8. John.
That's the thing with the Swans, right? Like I just said that second half games is just terrible at the moment. Apparently it's been like that all year, but that's not going to work in the final. So when they play Carlton, if they get a big lead, well, if they get up by 30 points and it's half time, you're still going to go, God, Carlton could come back and win this by 20.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter who you look at who they could possibly play. It is out of the 8 teams in the 8, there are 7 of them that you would look at and like, Swans are up by 30 at half time, but the other team could come back and win by 20. Like, there's no team in there that you just think, Swans are up at 30 by 30 now. It's sweet. It's fine. We're through. And that's going to be their big struggle. Even if they put on 50, they're up by 50 in the first half. You just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's right.
It's going to be edge of your seat stuff. And so, what do we say? It was Friday for that game. Not this Friday.
Yeah.
The next Friday the 7th, 8th. Friday the 8th.
Yeah, you're talking about the Sydney Carlton, yeah. That'll be at the MCG at Friday, September 8th, 7:50, that elimination.
So that actually, funnily enough, broke both the Swans and Carlton both broke their win streaks this week. So they'll be coming off a loss. But out of those 2 teams, I just think Carlton will put Swans away in the finals. And then we can move
You'd have to think so, yeah.
We can move on to GWS and Carlton. That was actually a great game of footy by GWS.
Yeah, so GWS had to beat Carlton in that last game, John. Last game of the regular season to reach the finals, and they did, winning by 32 points at Marvel Stadium. So GWS, as we said, finished 7th. They'll travel to Melbourne again, take on St Kilda in that other elimination final. So that means the Western Bulldogs, as we said, they miss out on the finals, finishing 9th.
It was very sad for all Bulldogs fans. They were in the 8 and then they were out.
Yeah. So it was an interesting race for the Coleman medal, John, right to the end. So that's for the leading goal kicker in the regular season of the AFL. So Adelaide veteran Taylor Walker, he kicked 9 goals against West Coast on Saturday. So that put him 1 goal clear of Carlton's Charlie Curnow going into this game. Curnow needed to kick 2 against GWS to win the medal. He kicked 3, so he's locked that in. So Curnow kicked 78 goals for the season and Walker 76. So a really good, I guess, last-ditch run for that Coleman medal, John. And that's Curnow's 2nd straight Coleman medal. He won it last year as well.
Yeah,
so
he's a good player. Man.
Yeah.
So in that game, it was really interesting because that was one of the ones I was watching. It was on at the same time as the Australia versus Germany match.
Yeah.
It was about 8 minutes to go, and GWS needed 1 more goal to adjust their percentage to finish 6th. And unfortunately, they let Carlton put 2 on them. That was the thing.
I guess that is one way of looking at it. I think another way of looking at it is they'll just be happy to be there, John. Yeah, they would have taken a 32-point win at the start of the night if it was offered to them, for sure. They would have taken a win by anyone.
It was just really
I know what you mean. There's that part of you goes, they could have had that. And it is a big, it's a big thing, right? Now they've got to go to Melbourne. If they had have finished 6th, St Kilda would have had to go to Sydney. Yeah. So it is a big deal, but I think they'll just be happy to be there.
Yeah, 100%. I would have liked to go to the Giants game as well. That's the thing. Like, I got nowhere to go now. I would have gone.
Yeah, it would have been nice, wouldn't it? Well, it would have been both the Sydney teams have to go to Melbourne in the first week of the final. It would have been nice to have one of them have a home final up here in Sydney. It's
good that both Sydney teams are in, but I was just like, come on, they're going to do it, No, wrong, damn it, no. Okay, now you got to score 2, guys. You got to score 2. No, don't let them. Now you got to score 3, guys. So I was sitting in my bedroom screaming at the TV. This nonsense. So that's the AFL.
Yeah.
The thing with the AFL this specific week was there was not a lot to talk about because there were so few games that mattered. There was only 3 games out of how many games? I have 9 games.
Yeah, 9 with the 18 teams. Yep.
And the rest of them were nonsense. We will go into post AFL season. We might schedule a show to go over previews for next year with the draft and everything like that because the Eagles got their first wooden spoon since 2010. They won the draft pick. Where do they go from here? I don't think they go very well next year either. But yeah,
it looks unlikely, John. So they'll go well next year.
Let's jump to the basketball.
Yep, sure.
So we have to go over 2 games for Australia. We're not going to. There's 1,000 games in the basketball, so we can't go over them all. Just a quick. So it is currently week 2. So basketball is quite frustrating because week 1 started on Thursday, week 2 started on Sunday, and week 3 starts tomorrow.
Yeah, I watched the end of that game against Germany last night. So there's a lot of stoppages, aren't there? It seemed to take 5 minutes to play the last 20 seconds.
That's one of the things about basketball.
Yeah.
So after week 1, I'm not going to go through the week 2 snapshot of the standings, right? After week 1, week 2 has already started. USA was on top of Group C. They beat New Zealand by 27 points. In Group B, this is just a highlight snapshot, Serbia absolutely mauled China. It was ridiculous. It was a 42-point deficit, 105-63. That was the biggest score in the entire comp. So the second biggest score was Group G, where Brazil beat Iran by 41. Brazil's not going to make a dent, but that was still a big score to put on Iran. Canada beat France 95-65. But Latvia actually sits on top of Group H because they beat Lebanon by 39 points. So it'll be interesting week 2. Week 3 actually starts tomorrow with Germany and Finland, and Australia needs to beat Japan. They have to. Germany sits atop that ladder, that group.
Yeah.
So to the Australian versus Finland game, basketball very difficult. It's only a 3-week tournament. It's
a lot of games crammed in, isn't it?
3 real weeks. But the way they classify their weeks, they
get it done quickly, don't they?
Yeah. So Australia actually. So one thing I just want to correct. I did mention that it's because of the ads. So the basketball is also being played on KO. It's not just on ESPN. So it's fantastic. You can actually watch every game. So I ended up watching on KO, not on ESPN. In the Australia versus Finland game, Australia dominated the Finnish teams. They outscored them by 26 points, and Josh Giddey, the young man, almost hit a triple-double. He got 14 points, 9 rebounds, and 8 assists. So for anyone who doesn't know, a triple-double is when you get 10 or more points in all 3 of those stats.
Very impressive. Paddy Mills topped the points for both teams in that game with 25 as well, John.
Yeah, they were actually down at one point, and we'll get into Germany as well, because this is a recurring pattern over the last 2 games. Australia aren't coming out of the blocks fast enough. They're getting a little bit dominated early. Yeah. And it is things like getting Paddy Mills, because basketball has a lot of rotation of players when you play. So when Paddy Mills is off, they tend to also slow down a lot. Then he comes back on and picks them back up. And so they've got to start. It was they were down, and then it was Giddey, Paddy Mills, and Joe Ingles who they flicked the switch and just dominated Finland. Then they went through the same process in Germany. And I was watching the Germany game and flicking between. They started the first quarter down 8-0. It's terrible. 8 unanswered points in basketball is a massive amount. Like, if you watch basketball, it kind of tends to go point.
Yeah.
But they were down out in 8-0. And then they called a timeout, which stoppages.
There's a lot of those, John.
They got 1,000 of them. And then they managed to, because that's what the timeouts are used for. They're used strategically to reassess and adjust your tactics. So both teams get to do it. Australia called the first timeout. And they ended up winning the first quarter 25-24. Okay? Then they started the second quarter the same. They started down and ended up losing the second quarter. The third quarter, they absolutely dominated. They were just over the top. And they thought, all right, cool. They're on top. So they won the third quarter. But then the fourth quarter, when it started, they started the quarter 10 points. 10 unanswered points. Germany scored against them. And Schroeder was the man of the match. He was the best player. He was just hitting threes from everywhere. At one point, Australia had 50 missed shots, 50% of missed shots on basket. So you think about that, they lost by 3 points. 3 points. And it was like...
What could have been, John?
Yeah, they could have actually won. Germany just came out of the blocks fast. And so Australia has to play Japan tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. Or the next day. I don't know. Week 3. Japan is not the best team in the world, but neither is Germany. And if Australia...
So do you think Australia will beat Japan?
I think they'll beat Japan. I thought they'd beat Germany. I thought they'd comfortably beat Germany. But they should comfortably beat Japan. I would hope so.
I mean, Mills, he topped the points, 21 rebounds. He had 5 rebounds, 6 assists. He topped all those statistics for Australia in that game too. So he's getting some impressive numbers, Paddy, in those couple of games. The coach Brian Gorgon, he looked filthy at the end of the game, John, with that decision not to foul Germany and award Australia with those free throws.
It was what happened was it was Giddy took one of those Hail Mary shots, and you could say that Germany fouled him, and then they should have been awarded free throws, but that wouldn't have won them the game. They were 3 points down. They could have gone through the tackle. They shoot the first one. Second one, they purposely missed and contest the ball and try and get 2 points. But 4.7 seconds left on the clock. At the time, they called their last timeout, and that was it. They were going for a Hail Mary. I don't think at that point Australia could have won. So an interesting thing about Japan is they did beat Finland yesterday. Okay. Yeah. So that was 98-88. And in theory, Finland should have beat Japan. So this is a real danger game for Australia. They're playing on tomorrow at 9:10 p.m, week 3, even though it's 4 days ago. And it's going to be an interesting game. It is on KO, so I encourage everyone to watch. So that's absolutely the basketball. There's so many games, and then so the knockout stages start on the 31st, this Thursday.
If you can work that out,
week 4, and there's basically every team in the knockout stages. It's a massive knockout stage. Yeah, basketball. It's just there's so many teams, so many games that happen. It's quite hard to do a regular update on, but we'll try and keep up to date. Match will be over. The whole tournament will be over on. The final is on Saturday, the 10th of September. So in 3 weeks. It's a 3-week period. Yeah. But it's good fun to watch as well. There are a lot of stoppages. When you're at the game, if you've ever been to
I've been to a couple of NBL games. Yeah. It's real fun. They serve full strength alcohol as well.
Absolutely. And they do the stoppages and you get fun stuff. So at the end, when I've been to NBA games as well, they give away free t-shirts.
It's a fun experience for the fans,
Balloons go over and drop money and things like that. Because there is a lot of stoppages and you need to keep the fans entertained. That's one of the beautiful things about American sport. They know how to keep it entertained. Australia should pay attention. The other thing that did happen on Saturday was that UFC. I couldn't stay up and watch it. I now know how old I am. It was 11 p.m. Just to touch on that, so as I mentioned, Justin Tafa got that one-punch KO on Parker Porter. That was expected. Interesting thing about this, Parker Porter has now fought both Justin and Junior Tafa, brothers. Right. High-level kickboxers. Both of them knocked him out in the first round. Poor guy. So Junior did do it faster, and Justin did it in like 1 minute and 10. In that, I discussed the Aaron Blanchfield versus Tyler Santos match for the women's flyweight title eliminator. So Tyler Santos was actually piecing Aaron Blanchfield up, absolutely dominating her in the first round because Tyler is an elite level striker. Blanchfield weathered the storm and then just out wrestled Tyler, held her up against the cage and ended up winning by decision. I think Blanchfield definitely won, right? But she took more damage, so she'll have to fight either Alexandra Grasso or Valentina Shevchenko, whoever wins next week. And then Max Holloway knocked out and retired Korean Zombie. Korean Zombie is a fan favorite. He had the very first twister submission in the UFC. He was well loved by all fans. Nicest, politest, most wonderful guy ever. He took time off for Korean military service, and then came back and was never the same. He fought for the title, and I told you Alexander Volkanovski asked him if he wanted to quit. Max Holloway knocked him out in the third, and so he's retired. And then the rest of the card was pretty uneventful, but the prelim card was really exciting. It had 5 KOs out of 6 fights.
That's a lot of KOs.
Yeah, and a lot of them were first round. Funnily enough, 2 of the matches, Billy Goff, he absolutely smashed Yusaku Kanshita, and both matches were first round, 4 minutes 16 stoppage.
Right, okay, very quick.
Very,
So are there any big fights coming up, John, that we can look forward to?
Shevchenko versus Grasso, I believe I was meant to check it before, so sorry, let me just check it now. So Shevchenko versus Grasso 2. This is on a fight night, and it is not next week, the week after, so in 2 weeks. It's on a fight night, so it's any KO subscription can watch it, not a pay-per-view. And then there's the Aussie card, Izzy Adesanya versus Sean Strickland. Now, Sean Strickland is quite the character, as is Izzy Adesanya. Sean Strickland's been banned from Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, like everything, because he's one of those guys. He was recently on the Joe Rogan podcast, and Joe Rogan had to be like, I think we're gonna just calm this down a little bit. So the press conference is the most exciting thing about that. What Izzy and Sean Strickland do to each other. That'll be a Conor McGregor Khabib kind of press conference.
That'll be one to look forward to, John.
The Australian card with tickets are ridiculous. I won't be going because the cheapest tickets were $500.
That doesn't come cheap, John.
No, it's ridiculous. We can move on past you. That's the UFC.
Yeah. Do you want me to do a bit of a US Open tennis preview for you, John?
Because it
does start tomorrow our time in Flushing Meadows. I've just got the matchups for the the first round matchups for the Australian players, John. I might just run you through those,
definitely,
if you don't mind. So Jordan Thompson, I'll start with the men. Jordan Thompson will play Botic van der Zandschulp of the Netherlands in the first round. Jason Kubler will take on Matteo Arnaldi of Italy. Tanasi Kokkinakis will play against a qualifier. Alexander Vukic will take on Alexander Zverev, the number 12 seed. So that's a tough one for Vukic. Hard to see him getting through that one against Zverev, who's a former finalist at the US Open. Lost to Dominic Thiem in the final in 2020. The one that was highly impacted by COVID, obviously. An all-Aussie affair in the first round on Max Purcell taking on Chris O'Connell. So that'll be a big one.
Well, that sucks.
Well, on one hand it does, on one hand it doesn't. At least one of them's going to get through to the second round. Alex de Minaur, the 13th seed, will take on a qualifier. Rinky Hijikata will play Patel Kotov. Another first round match. Alexei Popyrin, he'll also play a qualifier, John. Over to the women. Storm Hunter will play Karolina Mukova of the Czech Republic. She's the number 10 seed. Daria Saville will take on, forgive me for these pronunciations, John, I'll do my best, Cherie Ngonu of the USA. And Ayla Tomljanovic will take on Pana Udvardi of Hungary. So Ayla Tomljanovic, you'll remember, John, she actually, last year at this event, she put Serena Williams into retirement, beat her in Serena Williams' last match. John, I've just got a bit more information on Australia's history at this event, which is actually very good.
So let me just one thing. So these matches all start at 1 a.m. for.
It's set. Often the times with these, they're not sure the exact time they'll start because it depends when other matches finish. It depends where they sit in the schedule. So. It's sort of like basically your best bet if you're trying to work out what time matches are on, if you want to watch them, is to just sort of have a look at the schedule, have a look at whether it's second or third up on court, have a look at how long it'll probably take for the earlier ones, and you just sort of got to take a guess as to when. That's pretty much all you can do, because the matches before could take an hour, they could take 3 hours, 4 hours. It's hard to know, so you just sort of got to keep your eye on it, keep your eye on the schedule, how those earlier matches are going in order to tune into the ones you're interested in.
It's a hard watch, but the Djokovic match will be 10:15 a.m. in theory.
Yeah, so Djokovic, he kicks off his campaign against Frenchman Alexandre Muller. He's ranked 85 in the world, so Novak shouldn't have any problem with that. Carlos Alcaraz, John, he kicks off his title defence against Dominik Koepfer of Germany. So, you'd expect no problems for Djokovic and Alcaraz in those matches. If you don't mind, I've just got a bit of information on just the recent Australian history of this event, which is actually very good. So Pat Rafter won this event in 1997 and went back-to-back in 1998. So he won 2 in a row. He beat fellow Aussie Mark Philippoussis in that final. In 2001, Leighton Hewitt beat Pete Sampras in the final. And in the women's in 2011, Sam Stosur beat Serena Williams in the final. So this is one grand... And I know those are a fair while ago now, but if you look at it all in all, we do have a good history at this event. This is one of the Grand Slams that in recent times, and I say recent, I know I'm going back sort of 25, 26 years here, but in recent times, this is one of the majors we've performed better at. When you consider the fact that, it's been, apart from Ash Barty, we haven't had any Australian Open winners in recent memory. We've obviously struggled a lot at the French Open, again, apart from Ash Barty. Wimbledon, Ash Barty, Leighton Hewitt was the last one to win it. So looking at all the majors, this is one of the ones that we do perform well at.
You think De Minaur's probably our best bet of going through?
He is, yeah. And with De Minaur, it's just a case of, at some stage, someone, unfortunately, is going to knock him out. We just, he's going to at some stage, he'll run into a big name. And, he's not the sort of player who's going to topple a Djokovic or an Alcaraz. Yeah. It's just not going to happen. He's a player who plays to a certain level every time. He's not unpredictable. He gets to that level and other players just have to go over that level to beat him. And that's...
So where's tennis's Latrell Mitchell, Nick Kyrgios?
Nick Kyrgios, I believe he's missing from this tournament, John. I might just actually.
No, he is.
He's missing from this tournament. Yeah, so he's. I don't know. Why he's.
Apparently he's injured.
He's injured. I just don't know where he's at, John. I don't know. I think he might be...
in the American Open. That's the US Open, sorry. A wrist injury. He's had a wrist injury.
So I just don't know where he's at in terms of... where does this sort of leave him now? I mean, he's missed a whole... He's missed a whole year of majors. I mean, he's come back here and there... But he hasn't played a major this year, John. So you're starting to look at, there's real concerns now. I mean, I think he's 28 now. So
he still looks like he's 21. Like it's the way he behaves.
But this is the thing. He's just, and now there's guys like Alcaraz coming through now. So you're starting to think, well, he's left his run a bit too late now if he wants to win a major before the end of his career.
13th in the world without trying. Imagine if he had tried.
And he trained for 15 minutes a day.
Yeah, that's without trying 13th in the world. He beat at the time. He beat all of the top four, the big four, right? He did beat Djokovic. He beat Federer. He beat Nadal, and he beat Murray. I believe. That's an ultimate what could have been story.
Ultimate. Yeah.
So the US Open's an interesting one for us because Australia's a big tennis country, but it is 1 a.m. and you've got to wait and see what happens. Yeah,
I mean, your best bet is to watch those night matches, John, because they start at 7:30 New York time, and that's 9:30 a.m. our time. So
we'll have,
that's your best. The night matches are very viewer friendly for the Australian viewers.
We'll probably be watching the Djokovic match in the office, but other than that, it's going to be an interesting tournament. I think I really want to see that Alcaraz Djokovic. We touched on it last. I'll talk.
Be a great final that one. Yeah, as we go, John, we're going to. And on Wednesday, I'll obviously have an update of how things are going in the tournament.
That's another one where there's a lot of matches to go through, but we don't need to go through them all.
Our main focus in the early stages, John, will just be how the Aussies are going, and how if any big names get knocked out. If big names are just progressing, well, we're not. That's pretty obvious. We're sort of more looking in the early stages with how the Aussies are faring.
Definitely. John. Yeah. So do you want to talk about the Rugby World Cup?
Yes, Rugby World Cup.
Rugby World Cup kicks off on the 9th of September, I believe. I keep looking it up.
It's coming up, yep.
This is the third time in 3 podcasts that I've had to say 9th of September, I believe. Australia's going to open against Georgia. So just on England, Fiji actually beat England for the first time ever in a warm-up. 30-22. This is the first time ever that England have lost to a current Tier 2 team. And the coach's responses, I don't think, very, very good. They've got Argentina first, Argentina are a powerhouse in Rugby Union.
And it's the first time England lost to Fiji.
Yeah. There's going to be... Look, rugby has, just like every single sport, a small amount of top-tier teams. Every single sport is like that. People want to say, like, soccer has the widest variety, but they're still in the group of 16. There's still 8 teams making up the numbers. Rugby union is like that. You know, there's a group of 16 and 8 of them making up the numbers, but traditionally England is one of those 8 that aren't making up the numbers. And to lose to Fiji, you know, is not a good sign at all. And then we can move to Australia.
Lost 41-17 to France, 5th loss in a row under Eddie Jones, John.
Eddie Jones was meant to be the saviour. He was meant to make us actually challenge for the World Cup again. But I think this is going to be a long tournament for Australians.
That's the thing. I mean, his big thing in that press conference where he put on a big song and dance about how the reporters were coming down hard on him. His big thing seemed to be he was timing his run in this tournament. He was trying to get them right at the right time. And I know this is just a warm-up game, but there's got to be some signs that something's happening, doesn't there? Again, I know it's a warm-up game, but 41-17, there's no signs there that things are improving. There's no signs that they're building towards anything.
5 in a row, it's not just that the fact that they lost, but it's 5 in a row.
Yeah.
And
not getting 41-17, not getting close. It's
just really it's going to be a long tournament. And you know, if they don't make the Rugby Union World Cup group 16, whatever, the knockout rounds, it's gonna. Where Australia go from there, who knows? It's just so disappointing because Australia also used to be one of those teams that wasn't just making up the numbers, and now they seem to be one of the teams that's just making up the numbers.
I mean, look, I hope he's right. I hope he is timing his run. I hope that he's got some tricks in the trick bag that he can pull out when the main event gets underway in a couple of weeks' time. But it just doesn't look likely at the moment. Again, there's just no signs of what he's talking about.
Yeah, none at all.
You need something to hang your hat on, and there's nothing.
At least if they played well, it would have been, okay, because it's a youngish or newish squad, whatever you might call it. They have lost some of their chosen to not name some of their big names, but it doesn't look good at all. I think they have one more warm-up game, and we'll see. But can Eddie Jones win a match before the World Cup, please? That's all.
Yeah, well, they're going to have to get a move on, John. The way it's looking, they'll be going out very early stages. They might not even make the knockout. Well, surely they'll make the knockouts, John.
Yeah, that's if they don't, it's ridiculous. They have to. So we'll be doing a big concentration on the Rugby Union World Cup. There are so many.
As we get a bit closer,
there are so many World Cups this year. One of the things I wanted to just touch on is the hilarity of the Matildas had a historic run at the World Cup. They did very well. They finished better than any soccer team ever in the history of Australia. But now they're talking about permanent murals at Olympic Park.
I'm glad you brought it up, John. Now, statues for coming fourth. That's a disproportionate response to the achievement, John. The statue is for if you win.
Yeah.
If Kathy Freeman deserves a statue, winning the Olympic gold medal in the 400 metres.
Where's Leighton Stewart's statue?
Hey, I'd love a Leighton Hewitt statue, John.
It is, because those
I'd sign up for that.
Or Kieran Perkins' statue.
Yeah.
Maybe he has one.
Shane Warne has a statue, John.
Yeah, exactly. He achieved something.
This is the thing. A statue for coming fourth. I mean, and you know what? It does them a disservice too, because people will mock it. If they get a statue undeservingly, people will mock it and say, oh, well, why is there a statue of them? And also, John, what if the Matildas go on and win the next World Cup? Well, what, you've got a statue for coming fourth. What are you going to do for a team that wins it?
They build a giant Statue of Liberty statue.
Yeah, do they rename the Sydney Opera House or the Sydney Harbour Bridge, the Matildas Harbour Bridge.
Permanent mural at Olympic Park, statue in Queensland. Look, the Boomers came fourth in their last World Cup. The basketball, in the last Basketball World Cup, Boomers came fourth. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about basketball anywhere near as much as soccer. But it is beyond ridiculous. It does speak a lot to the acceptance of women's sport. And I was also just going to mention at the West Tigers Roosters game, I arrived early. because I wanted to get parking.
Yeah.
And the NRLW was on, and it actually, I haven't been to an NRLW match in years. I haven't actually actively really heavily participated in watching them for years, because when it did start, it was quite a poor quality of football. But it was awesome. They are so good. The women are so good. And what I really wanted to talk about was the crowd was really into it. After the match, kids were asking and getting selfies with the players. People in the crowd knew the players' names. It's building momentum. It's becoming popular. It wasn't just little girls going up to the NRLW players and saying, "Hey, can I get a photo?" It was little boys going up, knowing them by name. Clearly actual fans, getting photos. That's really good. That's an achievement.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. But a team that comes fourth in the Matildas and doesn't even get on the podium, they didn't even win a medal.
Yeah.
And they're talking about giving them a statue.
It's beyond
As I said before, disproportionate response to the achievement. It's out of proportion.
Where is the NRLW Roosters team statue? That came second last year.
Yeah, you can't give honours out of proportion.
I think what you said is really actually right. They achieve something, but it is disproportionate to what they achieved, and it takes away from that.
Yeah,
it's actually taking away from their achievement.
Yeah, even next time if they come second, then you go, well, we won a silver. That team came fourth.
Yeah, it's such a crazy thing.
And how do you have a statue for a team? Do you have a statue for every player in the team? How does that work? How does that work? That's a lot of statues. I wouldn't like to know how much that would cost. Yeah, how do you give a statue to a full team? A full team that didn't even win the thing.
I'm fine with a temporary mural at Olympic Park. That's a good thing. Here's a temporary mural, guys, until something else happens. But they're going to do it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. A temporary mural
at Olympic Park and a statue in Queensland is stupid. Continuing the discussion about female women's football, have you been following the Spanish controversies?
I haven't actually, John, but do tell.
So after the match,
this is interesting.
Before the World Cup kicked off, the 13 of the Spanish players signed a letter saying they didn't want to play for the Spanish manager, because he was overly controlling. He was demanding things like the players leave their doors unlocked at night so he could come into their rooms at night, wanting to see their shopping. It's absolute craziness. They ended up resolving that and playing and winning. They won. Then after the match, the Spanish president of football kissed one of the Spanish players on the lips without her permission. He just grabbed her and kissed her, which of course caused that. This is on international television.
So that's the president of the Spanish Football Association.
Yeah.
Has kissed a player on the lips without consent.
Yeah, and so apparently the coach, the manager that the players hate, is in with the president of the Football Association. So his job has been protected by this guy. So they were demanding he step down, and he refused. He said he did nothing wrong. So FIFA has now stepped in and suspended him. The manager of the Spanish Football Association has been suspended from all FIFA events by FIFA, and he's still refusing to step down. So the Spanish women's team that won the World Cup now don't want to play football anymore for Spain.
Wow. But surely they just step in and fire him, John. I mean,
well, that's what you'd think, but who fires him? Because who's in charge of the Spanish Football Association? FIFA can suspend the Spanish administration staff from participating in FIFA events, but who steps in and...
That's the thing. I guess it's hard for FIFA can't... How can FIFA regulate every individual country?
Exactly.
It's out of their
It kind of shows that although there is all around the world, women's sport is becoming more and more of a thing. And I think, like I said, it's great that I see little boys. It's what I discussed. I really think the target marketing should be men. Target marketing for women, for little girls, for recruitment and so on. But it shows that women's sport still has a long way to go, because there's no way that guy would have kissed a man on the lips against his will. If Spain had won the male World Cup, there's no way he would have walked up and kissed a man on the lips like that. It's absolutely ridiculous to think that he can do that. There's no way that a male club manager country manager would treat males. All the boys would be like, man, I don't leave my door open. What are you going to do about it? No, I'm not letting you look in my shopping. This is ridiculous. It's very, very, very poor form by Spain. I don't know enough about Spanish football and how it's run, but obviously, surely there's a board who could step in and instantly shut this down. Sack him. But they haven't. The fact that they're letting him stand there shows maybe the board is also this kind of behaviour. I just thank God that Australian football is not like this.
Yeah. Look, you can't be acting against, acting without consent in that matter on that stage. It's completely inappropriate behaviour, and he should, he needs to be held accountable. He needs to be stood aside from the role.
So I don't know what will happen. That's another interesting thing to follow. Controversy in football. Spain won the World Cup. All of Spain and the world should be talking about how the Spanish women's team won their first ever soccer World Cup. And instead we're talking about these alleged. But it was on international TV. It's not alleged, it actually happened. Hopefully that gets resolved, and women's football has done a lot for women's sport. So you really just want to see, we should be discussing the quality of the football and stuff, not stupid statues being put up for a fourth place team and club managers, organisation managers basically assaulting the players.
Agree, John. Completely agree.
So we're going to do a Wednesday
preview show. Preview for the weekend.
NRL, whatever else is happening. We'll discuss the US Open.
Yeah, we'll have an update on that, John.
And the basketball.
We'll have by then we'll have the full first day's results to look at, plus some of the results on Wednesday morning we can talk about.
Brilliant. And then of course the basketball week.
Whatever week it happens to be. So
don't forget to go to smartb.com.au for all your news and information. Subscribe and like to the podcast, and we'll see you guys on Wednesday.
Thank you.